This is Shirley with the Southern Gals Kitchen. I want to welcome you to our show today. We're going to make a really special meal. We're going to do some spiced apple pork chops. The topping is apples and cranberries and kind of a sauce that we're going to do on the pork chops. We're going to make sweet potato biscuits, and we're going to steam sweet potatoes to eat. What I'm going to do first is brine the pork chops. I've got 2 center cut, pretty good sized pork chops here. If you want 4, just double the recipe. I've got 6 cups of water, just half water, 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 1/3 cup of sea salt, 1/3 cup of apple juice concentrate. Don't mix it with water, just, the frozen concentrate, let it thaw just a little bit. Get your 1/3 cup out. You can either make the rest to drink, or I just keep my can unmixed with water, just the apple juice concentrate, in the freezer. Then when I need it again, I've got it. And then I went out and gardened, even though it's January here, fresh rosemary and fresh thyme. I've got a sprig of rosemary and a couple of sprigs of fresh thyme in there. You can buy fresh, or you can use the dried, but you can use the dried, maybe use just a little bit more of it. But you want that flavor, especially not so much rosemary, you don't want a lot of that, but the sprig, I might add a little bit extra in there. But I just mix this up. Brine is just really simple. A brine helps tenderize your meat, but it also gets the juice, the salt, and the flavoring into the meat, and it keeps the meat juicy and tender. So that's the reason to brine. I like to brine chicken, I like to brine pork chops. And it does really make a difference. You can brine up to 2 hours for pork chops. Anything over that, it will start breaking down your meat. So just keep it at the 1.5 to 2 hour mark. I like about 2 hours. And then I'll make the biscuits while this is brining. The sweet potato biscuits, they're awesome. They're working on our house, and my dog's going to bark soon. But then we will come back and put all this together for you and show you how we do the rest of the pork chops. Okay, we have all that in our bag. I'll just seal it up, make sure it's sealed really tight, or use a bowl with a lid that's really tight. And you want that meat pretty covered up in there, and I'm just going to set it back in my brining bowl. That way I don't have to worry about it. I will refrigerate it, and then in a couple hours I'll come back and make our biscuits. Okay, our pork chops have brined for 2 hours. I took them out of the brine, put them on a paper towel for about 5 minutes to let some of that water drain or dry. You don't want to put a wet, turn my heat on. You don't want to put a wet chop with water into that hot grease. So be careful with that. But just sort of dampen them, let them dry. I don't know, I let these set about 10 minutes on a wet paper towel. Once the skillet gets hot, I put about 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. Again, I use that because it has a higher smoke temperature than regular olive oil. And you can also use bacon grease, which I've done many, many times. I will put my chops, salt and coarsely ground peppers, and I'm just going to sprinkle each side. Sprinkle from my pie and just sort of cover. That keeps the salt and pepper from lumping all in those sides. And you cook these about 2 minutes on each side, and we're going to put them in the oven to finish up the process. So I'll let those cook about 2 minutes, and we'll turn them over and we'll do the other side. I'm going to use my oven to 350. It's preheating now. Almost there. And then we're going to cook these in the oven, 20-25 minutes or so, until the internal temperature is 145. Then you let them set for a little bit, and there'll be some carryover heating, so it'll be good. If you cook pork too long, or like chicken, especially chicken breast, it really gets dry. But if you undercook it, that's not good either. 145, and then some carryover heat is a good temperature for pork. That's generally what's recommended. Just don't let them dry out on you. But also, you do want them done. Use a meat thermometer. I'm like a meat thermometer, like I am with scales when I'm measuring for bread flour or flour to make bread. It really comes in handy to have a good, not a good scale, just an inexpensive scale and an inexpensive meat thermometer. That's all you need. Just check it, make sure it's 145, and then take it out and let it rest for about 10 minutes in the skillet on the stove, and it'll finish coming up to you anyway. These are almost ready to go into the oven. And then while these cook, I'm going to make my apple sliced cranberry applesauce. See you in a bit. Be sure to hang around. Well, our meat is about halfway finished cooking, so I'm going to go ahead and make this apple topping. It's almost like a chutney that goes on top. And I'm using 3 apples. These are actually galas. I've cut them up, poured them, peeled them, cut them up in slices. And I've got 2 tablespoons of butter here heating. I'm going to put the apples in just a minute. I've got 1/3 of a cup of dried cranberries. I've got a couple of sprigs of thyme from the garden again. I just pulled them off the stem. Probably about a tablespoon. You could use a tablespoon of if you wanted the dried. 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. A 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. And that cinnamon, cloves, and that brown sugar and those cranberries and those apples is really what makes all this. I've got a little salt and pepper here if we need it. And I've got 1/2 of a lemon. We're going to use that too. So let me go ahead and put my apples in. And we're going to cook them and let them just get so they're softened up. I like to cook this about 20 minutes. Take your chops out. Then you put this sauce over the apples. It makes it really good. So we're going to go ahead and add our cranberries in here, the dried. You can also use dried cherries. You can use frozen cherries if you wanted to, throw them out. But the dried works really well in here. And my thyme. Put in my brown sugar, cinnamon and cloves, and just a sprinkle of salt and pepper. I mean, just a sprinkle. Wouldn't need much. And then we're going to put in juice of 1/2 a lemon at the end. So we'll let this cook down. I'm not going to add the lemon yet. We'll let it cook, and we'll add the lemon last. And when this gets, the apples are softened, and this kind of makes a little bit of a chutney syrup kind of thing on it. Wonderful taste. It already smells good because you can smell that cinnamon and cloves. I love anything, I think, with cinnamon and cloves in it. I love gingerbread cookies, gingerbread, anything. I like cinnamon in anything, just about. So I'm a big fan of this kind of sauce because it's got my favorite things in it. Cranberries and sugar. You could do some light brown sugar, I guess. Some alternatives, I mean, if you wanted to. So just let that cook down. We're going to let this cook. It's about 8 or 10 minutes really at this point. Then we're going to add about 3/4 cup of that apple juice concentrate. Again, we're not mixing it up with water. It's just the frozen concentrate. 3/4 a cup. We'll add that in a little bit. Okay, our apples have softened and the dried cranberries have softened up. We're going to add our 3/4 cup of apple juice concentrate. And we're going to let that cook down, I don't know, 8 to 10 more minutes. What you want is everything just to get softened up, and the juice will thicken up here from all this sweetness in it and make kind of a thicker syrup on it. This would actually be good, you thicken this up. It would be good on pancakes or waffles with some whipped cream. If you wanted to do like an apple cinnamon kind of topping for your pancakes. It would be good on chicken, baked chicken, good on pork chops, be good on turkey. You get a turkey roll or turkey breast baked, you can slice it and pour this over it. So it's really good on a lot of different things. Just let it thicken up there a little bit, about 6 to 8 minutes. It'll start thickening up. Just kind of watch it. I'm going to turn my heat down to about medium and just let it cook. And then we'll come back. While our pork chops are cooking in the oven, we're going to go ahead and make our biscuits. That way they'll be ready to bake. Bake off at the last oh, I don't know, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes, so you want to kind of plan it before your meat gets completely done. And I've already baked off, not baked, but steamed another sweet potato. When I steam them, I have a double boiler, and it comes with a steaming basket. And I steam my sweet potatoes in that. We like them really better than baked or as well. And then, you know, I took about, pretty good sized potatoes. I took a little over half and mashed it up because we want 3/4 cup of mashed up sweet potatoes. I've got 2.5 cups of flour. Now the flour, you can use A&P white flour. This is the kind that's made for baking. It's a lighter, fluffier kind of, makes a fluffier kind of biscuit. But you'll see it in the store. It's made from soft winter wheat, and it does make a lighter, fluffier biscuit. Now a lot of times I'll use whole wheat, half white. I'll use einkorn, I use different kinds of grains, and I'm going to make shows with all those kinds of things with breads. But today, these are made with just just white flour or the soft winter wheat, which is a kind of a lighter baking flour. So we got 2.5 cups of that. This will make 10 to 12 biscuits. 2.5 teaspoons of salt we're going to put in. 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, because these are a little sweeter kind of biscuits. 3 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. We'll add in our mashed sweet potato. We're going to whisk all this together because, you know, you always want to whisk and get that baking powder, not soda, and salt and that sugar mixed up before you start adding things. Otherwise, you can get a lump of just baking soda or salt in your biscuit in one spot, you know, like that. The brown sugar, make sure it's mixed up well. Put my hands in there. Don't want any big lumps of brown sugar either. I'm going to make sure there are a few in there. We'll make sure they go out. Mash them up. You have to get your hands on biscuits anyway before it's all said and done. So it's okay to start with that. Okay, that looks good. We also have our sweet potato, 3/4 cup. And to our dry ingredients, we're going to add the 3/4 cup of mashed sweet potatoes, a 1/2 cup of lard. Now I'm using lard, and you want to get this cold ahead of time, but you can also use butter. Just make sure the butter especially is really cold, because biscuits are like pie dough. You want your shortenings, your butters to be cold. After you make these and roll them out, you can even stick that in the refrigerator, or you could even maybe slightly before you roll it out. But it's better just to get just get this cold and get it worked in. I'm going to work it in before I put in the sweet potatoes. Then you want to keep everything cold, pie dough, biscuit dough, with your shortenings, because otherwise that butter will just melt when it hits that hot oven. And also when that cold hits the hot oven, it puffs up little steam pockets, and that makes a flakier biscuit, which is what you want. These are really, really good biscuits. You'll serve them any time of the year. They're good around Thanksgiving, Christmas, but they're also just a good quick thing. You could mix up all your dry stuff ahead of time, and you could just come in and add your buttermilk, shortening. We're going to put buttermilk in a minute. Add your shortening or your butter, your buttermilk, and your sweet potatoes. You could have your sweet potato made up ahead of time. So you can do some prep on this. Just mix up your dry, and you see I'm using my hand more than the cutter. It actually goes a little faster than doing it with the cutter. But you want the flour and the butter or the lard, whatever you're using. I like lard because, again, it makes a flakier biscuit. It makes a tender biscuit. I use lard when I make my homemade tortillas too. Don't necessarily cook with it so much otherwise, but I do like it for biscuits. We don't make a lot of biscuits around here, so no more than I make them. Company, something like that, I'm okay with it. But if you don't want to use lard, just use butter, it's fine. Get that up kind of with the size of pea sizes. You don't want it thoroughly, completely mixed, you do want it kind of mixed up well. You want all the flour to have some lard in it, so you kind of shuffle it around in your hands a little bit. Make sure it gets pretty mixed up though, but it's still got some lumps in it, which it should have. Okay, now we're going to add our 3/4 cup sweet potatoes. We'll add those. And we're going to add in our half cup of cold buttermilk. Make sure it's cold too. And use full fat buttermilk. You don't want to start, well, I don't want to anyway, cutting calories necessarily, or cutting fat when you're making a biscuit, because you need the fat in there to keep your biscuits light and fluffy. So, you know, you can do, I guess, a lower carb some other way. I've made keto biscuits, so they're actually pretty good. I've made cassava biscuits, and I'll make those one day. They're really, really good if you want to stay away from wheat flour. Cassava biscuits are really, they're good. They're light and fluffy more than a keto is. And cassava flour is supposedly easier to digest. It is for me because it doesn't have all that gluten in it. And it makes a great biscuit, so we'll do those one day. You'll love them. If you have trouble with wheat flour, give cassava a try. Now you can't just take this recipe the way it is and mix cassava flour. That won't work. But I'll give you a recipe when you do those cassava biscuits. You can do cassava cakes. Most of them I've seen, they'll have a can of sweetened condensed milk in them. That's just awfully carby for me anyway. I might make one day for you, but that's not something I would make very often, I guess. A little too much sugar, but I think it needs that to make it work. So I don't know, we'll make one day and then you can decide if you want it. It's a good cake though. But there are alternatives to white flour, and einkorn biscuits are good too. I've created recipes for einkorn. I actually wrote a book on ancient grains, and we're going to talk about ancient grains on the show. But you make awesome cookies and biscuits, and you can eat homemade pasta, all kinds of things with einkorn flour. I have an einkorn baking group on Facebook. You want to join it? Called Einkorn Baking. They're similar. This one's just called Einkorn Baking, and you can ask to get in that group, and I'll review your. I always review people's profiles because that's what I do. And then I have a newsletter. You can contact me about getting my newsletter too. So just contact me on Facebook, and it's Shirley Sando, S-A-N-D-O, as opposed to the Southern Gal on your Facebook. Now we're going to add our half cup of cold buttermilk. Get all that out. Again, use full fat buttermilk. So we'll mix that up. Then we're going to roll these out and cut them out and bake them in a 425 oven. I've already got my oven preheated, and they'll bake about 10 to 12 minutes. But again, you want to time this right before your meat's done, so your biscuits are hot with your meal, obviously, unless you want to heat them up some way. But you can also freeze these. They freeze pretty well. They're good the next day. They make a little, if you've got some from the holiday, let's say you have some ham, you slice it real thin, or turkey, you make a good little sandwich with these too. Ham and mustard and maybe a little cranberry sauce on there makes a good little sweet potato biscuit sandwich. So a lot of things you can do with biscuits besides just eat them with butter and honey like we like. Or jelly. On these I like honey, or I like molasses, especially on sweet potato biscuits, but a lot of times I'll just use just honey though. And not very much of that, just a little bit goes a long way. You just want to mix this until all the flour is incorporated, but you don't want to overwork it. There's still some dry on the bottom, so don't work that in. I'm going to go ahead and put it down on a cutting board, my rolling board, and I'll finish it up. And I'm going to put just a little bit of flour on here, not too much, just a little bit. See how much we need, just so it won't stick. Add our dough on, biscuit dough. And then we're going to just mix this up a little bit better. It's going to be wet and sticky. Keep some flour in your hands. It's exactly how you want it. If you get them too dry, they're going to be dry biscuits. And that's not what you want. So you just want to be careful with this. Don't overwork it. Just work it as much as you need to, but not too much. And not too much flour. A little less flour, the better. You don't want to start working a lot of flour into your breads or biscuits, either one. Just what you need, that's all you need. I'm going to, this is looking pretty good actually. I'm going to pat this out as opposed to rolling it out as much as I can. Flour going there. And then I'll roll it just a little bit. I like them about an inch thick. So they're kind of there, right there. Not far from it. That's pretty much an inch thick. Alright, and then take your cutters. Now these are kind of big cutters, so I might not get 10 out of this because they're pretty good size. Don't twist, just go straight down and straight out for your biscuits. These are going to be big biscuits. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my cutter. Actually, we'll roll out pat out another one, or cut out another one. And just keep on working around. These are giant biscuits. But that way you don't have to eat two. You just eat one. Well, you might want to eat two. And then take your scraps, take just a tiny bit more flour, just enough to keep it from sticking, and then pat that out. About an inch thick. Make a few more. So we've got 4, 5, 6. I'm going to get about 8. Let's do 10. That's alright. Like I said, these are bigger. If you had a smaller cutter, this is a little bigger than average. Most of biscuit cutters are smaller than this. This is not really a biscuit cutter per se. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, the last one's going to be small. And what you want to do is make sure you watch it. Because you're going to have to take that one out of the oven sooner. Just going to make a little round biscuit out of it. To bake these biscuits, I have a cast iron pizza stone. And I like it for biscuits. You can also use a cast iron skillet, or you can just use cookie sheet. I do like to just grease it with a tiny bit of oil. Avocado oil is what I use because it has a higher smoke temperature. So it won't smoke up as much in your oven as olive oil will. Biscuits on. You want them about 2 inches apart. Gives them room to cook. That's why I like the cast iron thing, the big one, the pizza stone, because they have plenty of room. There they are. Does that not look good? Those look amazing. And we're going to a couple of tablespoons of melted butter, the tops with the butter, melted butter. And these are going to be ready to bake off. Check them in about 10 minutes. You know, you just want them done, kind of browned on the top. They'll start to brown. These are amazing biscuits. You're going to love them. We'll be back. Okay, we've got our meal pretty much put together here. We've got our pork chops cooked. Don't they look good? They're nice and golden and brown. We've got our biscuits made. That's awesome. And then we've got our sauce, the apple cranberry sauce. And see how it's thickened up? You cook it and really get it thick, cook it way down. And then just let it sit for a while. And it will go ahead and thicken up. It's perfect. Now what we want to do, this is still warm, I'm going to put lemon squeezed over the top. And just stir that in. And what we're going to do then is pour this over the pork chops. I'm just going to try to pour it right here in the skillet. And just get them all in there, kind of spoon it on really more than pour it. So I want some on each chop. Again, I've got 2 chops. If you had 4, you would just put it over all 4 of them. You might want a little extra. You know, double the recipe for the sauce, double the recipe for everything. There's 4. These are pretty good sized chops. And then I'll just pour that over there. A little bit heavy. Yum, yum. It looks so good. Biscuit here, and I'll put butter and honey on it. Got my sweet potato with just a pinch of salt sprinkled on it, a little bit of butter, and a little bit of cinnamon. And then I'll get my pork chop and my apples and cranberry. So we've got pretty much cinnamon. We got cinnamon in our topping. We've got cinnamon on our sweet potato. We have sweet potatoes and our biscuits. So it's kind of a cohesive kind of meal here. It's going to be good. I'll take a little bite for you. Pork chop cooked to 145. And then like I said, I let it rest with a lid on it. Or actually mine rested for quite a while because I was busy doing other things. But I just reheated my sauce and put it on there at the last. That is just one good bite. I'll tell you, with that pork chop, those apples and cranberries and cinnamon and brown sugar, these biscuits are just flaky, flaky tender. This is perfect with this kind of meal. And our sweet potato just rounds the whole thing out. A really good meal. I hope you try it. Let me know how you like it. You're going to love it though. There's nothing not to like. Try the biscuits. Make them sometime. You can make those for breakfast. You can make them for any meal. Try the pork chop with your apples and your sweet potatoes. Just a fantastic meal. We'll see you on the next show. Hello, this is Shirlene Sando, and I hope you enjoyed our show today. We certainly enjoyed filming it for you. I hope you'll join us every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern on Lupo TV. We'd love to have you join us. Hit the like button, like us, and share if you will. We'd love to have you share it with your friends, family, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. We would love to hear from you, and we hope you'll join us every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central.